You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 52. Today I'll be talking to Oscar Ukonu. Alright, so my name's Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. Art Affairs is my attempt at shining a spotlight on the many wonderful people that make up this amazing art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, telling their stories. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes, at artaffairs.podcast.com, but the best way to stay plugged in is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're really enjoying the show and want to help support what I'm doing here in an even bigger way, check out the Art Affairs Patreon. Not only does it give you an opportunity to help keep the show going, but there are several community-oriented benefits as well, like getting early access to episodes and suggesting questions for upcoming guests. You can find all the information about that at patreon.com/artaffairs. You can also connect with the show on Instagram and Facebook at Art Affairs Podcast. All right, so today's guest is artist Oscar Ukonu. Oscar's been mentioned on the show a couple times by previous guests. Both Ken and Arinze brought him up, and Arinze actually recommended that I have him on the show. And similar to those other two artists, Oscar hails from Nigeria as well, and creates work that's firmly planted in the hyperrealism subgenre. What sets his work apart, though, at least for me, is his use of ballpoint pen to create his incredibly detailed renderings. I talked to him about his attraction to ballpoint pens and what it is about that medium that he likes so much, how he first started showing his work while he was still in school, the way that he takes a piece from concept to final drawing, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Oscar Ukonu. Oscar, welcome to the show, man. It's really good to have you on.
Well, thank you so much, Faith. Thanks for having me.
All right, awesome. And shout out to Arinze for recommending you. He was the one that actually suggested that I have you on the show. And you actually came up in my conversation with both Arinze and Ken. Both of them mentioned you.
Well, they're my friends. And then, we've had this thing going on for some time. We've had an exhibition together and we share a lot together as well.
Yeah, awesome. So you reading up on you, you currently live in Lagos, Nigeria. Is that where you grew up as well?
No, I grew up in the eastern part of Nigeria. I grew up in Owerri. Yeah, but then I moved to Lagos. I moved to Lagos in 2015.
Okay, and what was the area like in East Nigeria where you grew up?
It's very, very quiet, because it's not like the commerce hub. Lagos is where you have the commerce hub, the economic hub of the country. So in the eastern part of Nigeria, it's very quiet, and you see, it allows you this time to really observe, the life of the people around there, because there's no buzz, there's no extraordinary buzz. You just have people going to work and, coming back and stuff. But in Lagos, it's different, you have a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, no, Ken and Arinze both talked about how Lagos was like this bright, shining, cultural center of Nigeria. So, where you grew up, it was a lot different, a lot quieter, a lot more rural.
It's a lot different.
Okay.
It's a lot different.
What kind of work did your parents do when you were growing up?
No, my parents are teachers. Both of them are primary school teachers.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
And so did they teach you when you were in school? Like, were they your teacher?
My mom was my teacher. My mom taught me once. Yeah, my mom taught me once. Yeah, at the time. But, most of the time, you're always in class when you're home, because, they're all teachers. And then when you're in the house, it's just like school continues. Just like the school followed you home.
So, yeah, it makes homework a whole new experience.
Exactly. Exactly.
Did you have much exposure to the arts as a kid? Like, is art something that you had around you?
Yeah, sure. But then I think my first take on art was in form of craft. So I was like trying to make stuff, trying to design art and design, trying to design stuff and all of that as a kid. The drawing part came when I was in architecture school. It was actually the art. It was actually the crafts and the design that led me to study architecture in school. And when I got in school, I started drawing more, and it kind of changed the direction of my view on art.
Okay, yeah. So you did end up going into school for architecture. So what was it about? Was it your experience kind of doing crafts and drawing as a kid that led you to architecture? What was your interest in architecture?
Okay, my interest in architecture is design proper. So as a kid, I was trying to design stuff. I was trying to, design buildings and stuff, with our paperworks and stuff. So that was exactly what led me into studying architecture. And, when I got into architecture, we did the very first part of, the architecture was more on drawing, So we're trying to make these drawings, we're trying to understand lines and, how they work. And that really influenced my art to what it is today, because most of the cross-hatching techniques I use for my work are stuff I learned when I was trying to, draw with the ink in architecture.
Okay, interesting. And I know one of the things that I heard from both Ken and Arinze, from a cultural perspective, when they were going into school, they didn't, or their parents didn't feel like art was really an option. They had to go into things like science or engineering, more quote unquote practical degrees. Was that your experience as well? Was art not really on the table? And that's one of the reasons why you kind of went into architecture, which is arguably a more, practical degree?
Yeah, sure. I didn't really fully thought of studying art, as a kid. Like I said, I was always being directed towards design and craft, and that was what led me to study architecture. But then I can't remember putting art and architecture, in front of my parents and stuff like that. But if I did, just like every other Nigerian parent, they will not allow you to do that, because they didn't see art as, something that, this idea of the suffering artist, this idea of the broke artist, it's something that they see every day in the society, and they'll be like, I want you to do something that is more lucrative. I want you to do something that is more practical, like you said. And that was like the direction everyone followed. So I believe if I put art and architecture in front of my parents, they were going to choose architecture.
Where did you end up going to school for architecture? What school did you go to?
I schooled in Federal Polytechnic, where I grew. Yeah.
Okay, so that was close to where you grew up in East Nigeria?
Exactly.
Okay. And from what I understand, it was while you were in college that you started really kind of getting serious about the art side of your craft and started kind of teaching yourself how to create art just for yourself. Did they offer like art classes in the school that you were going to? Was it something that you had available as an elective or something that you could take as formal course?
Oh, no. Yeah. They do offer art. So there's a department of art and design in the school I attended, and they had great talent because they were really focused on sculpture and the rest. And you could see that, even when you're approaching the faculty, you're always going to see, some of the stuff they've done and stuff. So it's really a good school to study art, but I was in another department, yeah.
Okay. So you didn't take any of those courses?
Yeah. I didn't take any of those classes. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you go about learning your art craft? Like the drawing that you do today, how did you end up learning how to do it?
Like I said, my style in art is really modeled and around my use of lines, which is like a base course, because when you study in architecture, you need to learn drafting, because I know there is computer where you have to do all the works on the computer now, with the computer aided designs. But then you're always going to learn the traditional drawing, the traditional drafting, and we use lines for that. And we use pens for that as well. So we use the Rapidograph pens, and that was really what helped me to master the use of ink drawings and stuff. So it's kind of, my whole art style is modeled around my drawing in architecture in the first years.
Okay. And I guess why is it that you settled on hyperrealism as your focus. You know, of all the different types of arts that you could have possibly kind of gone into, what influenced you to develop a craft focused on hyperrealism?
Okay, yeah. I think portraiture is an area of arts I really started picking interest in when I started, understanding my talent and my skill in drawing. But then, sometimes around 2015, I started becoming more conscious of my art, and that was when I started asking myself these questions of what really do I want to do with my art and what stories do I want to tell. And I found out that I want to really, go deeper into portraiture and tell the stories of, the people around me and stuff like that. And my style of work, I like to call it Afro-realism, just the way you have hyper-realism. So it's just about me telling stories using portraiture and telling the stories about the people around me.
Okay. And had you seen, like when you were starting to really kind of investigate your own style and kind of develop your own artistic voice, had you seen other artists in that style around you that you drew inspiration from? Were there other people that you were inspired by?
Yeah, sure. When I started drawing early, I started looking on the internet. That's where you see a lot of diverse styles among artists, and there's these few artists that caught my attention, and I'm like, oh, if I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna like do something that kind of look like this works and stuff. Oh, and one of them is Kelvin Okafor. Kelvin Okafor is he's a British artist based in Tottenham, and he does hyperrealism works, and although his base medium is pencil and graphite and and charcoal and stuff, and they're so realistic. And when we really started seeing those works, and you get wild, and when it's something that you feel, when something that moves you, you always want to kind of go in that direction and stuff. So he's one person I can say I saw his works early on the internet, and it really motivated me to do something in that direction.
Very cool. So, you kind of really started diving in around 2015, and it was 2016 that you participated in the big Insanity show at the Omega Gallery, which you mentioned earlier. You showed with Ken and Arinze and several other hyper-realist kind of focused artists while you were still in school, which is impressive. So I guess how did you first make that connection with that gallery and start showing your work?
Okay, yeah. So the idea is this, most of the time we can't really underplay the influence of social media in networking, right? So I get to connect with most of the artists initially via social media, Instagram in particular, and we started sharing ideas and stuff, and we moved that. We worked it. I was in Lagos at that time, so we had this like artist connect kind of, where we all met, share ideas, show ourselves our works, and that was where that conversation started. And then a few of us that are like interested in core hyperrealism, there are lots of artists, other artists that were there, but then the few of us that were really doing hyperrealistic works decided to have that show, and that was how I made the first connection.
Was that your first time showing your work in an exhibition?
That was my first time, yeah. That was like my inaugural exhibition, yeah.
It's kind of crazy that one show had such a big impact on so many artists, because, Arinze, Ken, all of you guys have mentioned that show as being this really important presence in the kickstarting of your career. I think that's pretty incredible.
True, yeah. I'll kind of say that it's about the reception of the show, because these were like, I think out of 10 of us, we just had one person that studied art. So these were like outsiders, right? So yeah. So the arts community are going to see we are like, oh, these are like outsiders, coming into this. And then regardless, they accepted that show, and the reception was really good, and it kind of helped the artists to believe that they have something and they can give more.
That's interesting. I didn't realize it was kind of perceived as this outsider, kind of intruding on the, on the art world.
Out of 10 artists, just one, out of 10 artists, just one studied art.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, you obviously continued on with your schooling even after you started getting attention for your artwork. Was that difficult to stay focused on architecture when you really had this passion kind of growing in you to become an artist?
Yeah. So my passion for architecture and art is like 6 and a half a dozen. It's just like it's shared, right? And so I always make out time, to tailor my schedule to accommodate both of them, and that was how I finished school. And though I didn't do much in the art industry because, the attention that was required from school was really, really like more intense and stuff. So I gave my architecture more time until I finished in 2018.
Is architecture something you still have an interest in and maybe split your time between art and architecture in some way?
Yeah, sure. I design and do the other stuff.
Yeah. So following that show, your first gallery exhibition at Omenka, how did you then transition to kind of make the leap outside of Nigeria and become more recognized internationally?
Yeah, sure. So the thing is, with social media, it's just like you have the globe in your palm, right? So, I started posting my work more often, and then I found out like more creative ways to digitalize my works because they are here, they're in the flesh, and no matter how good I make them look, if I'm not able to present them on the internet and in a way that makes you feel like you're present in my studio, then that way you cannot really connect with it. So I started finding creative ways to digitalize my works, professionally, so I can post them on the internet and make people feel whatever they're going to feel if like they're in the studio. And that was like how I got to connect with more people and, we started growing and stuff.
Okay. So Instagram has served a big kind of role in the growth of your career.
True.
Interesting. So ballpoint pen is your primary medium of choice. You mentioned earlier that you during your studies with architecture that the rapidograph pen was, the technical pens were what you mostly used at that point. So at what point did you shift to ballpoint pen as your medium of choice rather than, pencil or maybe some of the rapidograph?
The rapidograph. Yeah, sure. So, the whole idea of myself using the ball pen was it kind of allowed me more fluidity in drawing than the rapidograph pens because the rapidograph pens are the type of ink that we use gives you these straight lines and they're like how do I explain it, like they're like very well defined, but with the ball pen. But with the way the ball pen works, you can determine the weight of your strokes by how much pressure you can apply and all of that. So that kind of helped me to create better tunes and better tones and shades and more even value in my works and stuff. So it was the ball pen, like the way the ball pen writes and the nib of the ball pen that really made me to go in that direction.
Do you find that rendering in such great detail with the ballpoint pen is more challenging than maybe if you were using graphite or charcoal or something that had, with pencils, with graphite, you can sharpen it to different, sharpnesses and have hard or soft lead. You have a lot of different options available to you and you have an eraser with ballpoint pen. It's just the ballpoint pen and you're kind of limited as far as how much you can vary that. So do you find that that's an extra challenge for you?
Yes, it is. And when I really started off, I can say it was a huge challenge because I understood that the ball pen is very unforgiving. It's an unforgiving tool, and once you draw a line, it's gonna stay there, and that kind of narrowed down like my creativity because I had this in my head that I cannot erase this once I make a mistake. My works then were slower. My works was very kind of robotic in a way, and until I decided that I'm just going to allow the drawing style flow. kind of, I opened it up and I understand I'm going to make mistakes, but then these mistakes are in and of itself, it has a role to play in the work. So it's kind of, I freed it up and I allowed myself just to draw.
Okay. So a little bit more, I guess, embracing those errors a little bit more and not letting them hold you back.
Be rigid.
Okay.
Yeah. Not letting it be like a rigid technique.
So what do you do? I mean, when you make an error, how do you rebound from that?
Okay, so I build on it because of my style of drawing. I try to build layer by layer. So I don't really like I don't really like diving deep into getting the dark tones once. And so if I want to get a dark tone, I always build on it with like layers on layers of light tones before I could get there. So before I could get to any very dark area, it has taken a lot of thoughts and a lot of strokes. So it's very difficult.
Okay. So, but by the time that it gets to the final layer, it's any error that might have happened has been covered up already.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, what about the color? You have a very recognizable style in that you always use blue. What was what went into your choice of using blue versus black or any of the other colors that are available?
Yes. The thing is, the reason why I use blue is like one of the most traditional colors of ball pen when you think about ball pen. And yes, and the reason why I'm stuck with blue is because of the way I want my work to be perceived. I like my work to be perceived as like a story, like the same way I'm going to pick up a blue pen and write a story and tell a story of a people or a particular, like that's the way I see blue and in my works. And when I look at the works and I see that color, it just gives me a memory of all the things I've written, all the stories I've written. So it's just an idea. It's just an idea that I'm writing stories through portraiture, and
Oh, interesting. I like that. I like that it connects back to your kind of feelings of just writing, prose. Are there other types of mediums that you'd like to explore someday that you're interested in?
Yeah, sure. I'm really interested in oil. I'm really interested in acrylic on canvas and stuff. But that's like something I'm really going to work in, before I start using them in my works.
Sure, yeah. So when you're starting on a new piece or like a new series, what's usually your first step in that kind of ideation stage? I know you like to take reference photos yourself. So is that photo shoot the starting point for an idea, or have you already started sketching stuff out even before you started taking photos?
So when I have an idea for a work, right, and I feel this idea is something I can just flesh out in just one work, or if it's something I'm going to develop in series, I try to sketch it down and see how much I can expand on it. And if it's not something I can really write down, I try to flesh it out with sketches, because it's not all visual thoughts that I can always write. And from that stage, I try to schedule for photography. So most of the time, the subjects of my works are my friends and, family members or even strangers and all of that. But I invite them over to the studio to have a photo shoot session, which I can take about 100 pictures, yeah, just for one walk. And, with time, I get to narrow it down, to a select few, maybe about 5 pictures, that I can work with. And this is just for one walk. And normally, when I begin the drawing process, I like to use all of the pictures, maybe the select few, maybe the 5 pictures, just so I can give the work a unique direction that is not just going to be restricted by just one photo, which is a moment. Yeah. So I use about different pictures to give it this unique direction and free it up a little bit.
Does it help when you're picking the models that you use in your photo shoot? Does it help if you know the person? Does that matter at all?
Yeah. The more I know the person, the more what I'm most concerned about is a particular story or a moment in the person's life. So it doesn't really mean that I should know everything about the person. So I really look at like a particular moment and I want to flesh that out in my work, or a particular story that this person have in their life that I want to flesh out in my work. So like it's like the stories that I'm more concerned and not just about the person.
So are the stories that you're telling their stories, or are you just using them as a way of telling your stories?
It's kind of it's okay. First of all, I'll say that what really influenced my work is my own personal experience, my own personal living experience, and the living experience of and the cultural living experience around me, right? The people and all of that. So I find a way to. The works are either my own stories or the stories of like a story that has a more community feel, or try to portray culture and all of that.
Okay, interesting. So, going into that photo shoot, do you already have like poses in mind already that you want to be a part of that experience, or is it something that is more organic and kind of develops as you take photos?
Yes. So what I do most of the time is I always bring in like a third element in the work. So So if rather than just the subject in focus, I always try to use fashion, like the attire. I also try to use some other stuff like a headband. I try to use like maybe the type of hairstyle and all of that. So all of that come together to kind of give the photo shoot a direction, but it's always going to stem from the original idea, because one of the things about art is, especially when you develop your art style from like ideas, is that you can lose the story, from the idea, from ideation to the execution. So you just want to retain that fidelity, and you just want to carry in whatever idea you have. You want to carry it across all these different stages of your creative process to the finished work. So you're always trying to make sure that you're in line, with whatever idea you want to portray.
Do you ever find that it becomes something different than what you originally?
Most of the time,
yeah.
It happens. It happens most of the time, and that's the time where you really have to, because I spent a lot of time with my works. I spent about 8 weeks on a particular piece. So you start developing these works, and in 4 weeks in, you start to see a different direction, and as the artist, you're also a viewer first time, you're also the viewer. So you're also seeing as this thing is graduating, and you find a way to make sure that try to make sure that you have this in direction with the original story. And in times when you can't do that, you're just going to allow it to flow,
Yeah. And so, once you've finished the photo shoot, you've picked out a handful of photos that you want to go forward with. I read that you do intense studying of your subjects, like the week, like even a week before you actually start working on it, just so you can really absorb that person and kind of meditate on them. Are there specific, I guess, why do you feel that that's an important component to your process? Are there specific things that you're looking for?
Yes, because I take a lot of pictures, and I want to understand the select few. I want to understand the pictures which are not in direction with the original thoughts. I want to understand the type of pictures that present these people in their elements. I want to understand the type of picture that portray them, in their true selves and all of that. So that is like what I do in that period. And once I select about 10 pictures or 5 pictures that are in the same direction, then I'm good to go. So it's time of like studying the pictures and trying to understand how they best express my subject.
Okay, and I read that you sometimes will even make them the background of your computer, just so you're just always looking at them.
Exactly. I have them on my screen. Yes, exactly. I have them on my screen.
Which I think is interesting. I think it speaks to the level of investment that you're giving to that person. I guess, are you looking for specific things in addition to it aligning with your theme? Are you looking for things like lighting or specific details like skin texture, or is it just memory recall in general?
Yeah, sure. I use lighting in ways that yeah, I use lighting, and I always want to make sure that the skin is on focus so I can really render them the way I want to. And the whole idea is just to present the subject in as realistic as possible as I can, within the limit of my own skills and all of that. So it's just about how real I can present this subject.
Mm. Once you're ready to start actually putting pen to paper, and once you feel like you've gotten a good feel for the subject, how do you go about developing the composition initially? Do you draw like preliminary pencil sketches before you start drawing the final piece?
Yes. So to get my proportions right, I use the pencil, to try and get the proportion, put in different facets of different pictures that I want, to go in. So the whole composition, it's what the framework I build that with the pencil, before I go in with the pen.
Okay. And because it is a more unforgiving medium, pen, do you have to plan things out more concretely ahead of time, just so you have everything down before you start working on the final piece?
Oh no, not really, not really.
No?
I understand how unforgiving the pen is, and I just allow that to be a fact, and just ride along with it, because I told you earlier, when I really started off, it kind of made my work very rigid, because I wasn't able to kind of flex my skills and my rendering skills, and yeah. So, and then I started working on like I wanted to draw with the pen, like I was using pencil. And that was very difficult until I started understanding that for me to draw with the pen, I need to use it like a pen. So that's how I started building my core hyper realistic skills that around hatching, cross hatching, scribbling. These are like all pen techniques, and that kind of made me understand the way the pen works better than just trying to draw it like I'm using a pencil. That didn't work.
No, I think it's cool that you've kind of embraced the I guess fluidness of the medium. Once you start working on the final drawing, do you have a particular strategy in mind as far as like how you approach it? Do you start from top down? Do you start with a particular part of the anatomy, like the eyes, or how do you usually approach the final drawing?
Yeah. I think I start like I try to study this, right? Like I've made a lot of drawings, and I just ask myself, what part of the drawing do I always want to start from? And I found out that I just start from like the most captivating feature. So if it's the eye, that's the most captivating. You see, I always dive in, using the starting from the eye. Sometimes it's just the hair. Maybe I'll just see a hair strand, that caught my eye, and then I'll start from there.
Okay, interesting. And obviously, your works take a lot of time to create. Because of that, do you work on multiple pieces at once to sort of break things up, or do you just stay focused on one piece at a time?
I work with, but no, I can't really put in all that time in one piece, because it gets draining at some point. So I have about 2 or 3 works every time going on in the studio.
Okay.
Yeah, so that way you're able to multitask, and do some other, stuff.
Very cool. So shifting a little bit into the specific, themes that you tend to focus on, I guess what message are you trying to communicate through these stories that you're telling, both about yourself and the subjects that you have as part of your photo shoots? Are there common themes between them that you're trying to communicate in a broader message?
Yeah, sure. So the type of style the type of style I use in communicating my art is it's more like I use more like iconographies of black identity, and centered around issues like gender inequality, religion, politics, and all of that. So So it's just about the Afrocentric identity around all these other subjects.
Okay, and you mentioned Afrorealism as a term that kind of captures the style that you're going for, and I saw that also mentioned in your bio. And like looking the textbook definition of that up, it's a genuine acknowledgement of the difficulties facing Africa and the kind of central role that Africans play in their own growth and development, which I think contrasts a little bit from like styles like Afrofuturism, which I talked to Hebrew about, and Afrosurrealism is another style that I think contrasts nicely. I guess, why do you think that it's the realism form of storytelling that you kind of settled on, and that's been your primary mode of communication? Why do you think that resonates with you so much?
Okay, yeah. So looking at art history, especially here in Nigeria, you find out that we've had a lot of art movements here, and we've not really had that moment. And I mean, if you should look at like in the expanded world view, if you look at some if you look at the timeline of art history in most let's say like in Italy, in France and the Netherlands and the right, you find out there's a moment in time where the artists want to tell the story about their own people, and that is realism. They're trying to tell this story from your own very perspective, and the story about your people, the real life. You're not trying to make portraits of monarchs. You're not trying to make portraits of presidents. You're trying to tell the stories of the people around you, and this is the time that I see that most African artists, most Nigerian artists, are trying to do that, and this is very important it's a very important time in Nigerian art history, that a lot of these artists want to tell the story of their own people, of what they look like, right? In the most realistic possible way that they can. And that is what I understand Afrorealism, and it's not just about how we feel. It's not just about the idea of Africa and, from the Western perspective. This is about this is about identity of the African, living experiences told by Africans themselves. You see this across, different countries, and especially in Nigeria.
Why do you think that we've seen that shift into that having more and more artists focus on telling the genuine stories of their experiences and the experiences of the people around them?
Okay, so yeah, sure. This is something that comes with how do I put this now? I think this is something that comes with this understanding that this story about me doesn't best represent me, right? So, and this cuts across literature, this cuts across filmmaking, this cuts across art, visual art, and you see this happening at the same time. So it's an important time when Nigerian creatives feel they should tell their own story, with their own voices and with their own talent and, with their own craft. So it's something that is just somebody that wants their voice to be heard and heard from them originally.
Do you feel that historically that hasn't been the case? That you feel that maybe the stories weren't being told in a genuine and authentic way?
Yeah, okay, so the idea is this: in the Nigerian art history and stuff, most of our iconographies are really based on symbolism, so we did more sculpture, our drawings were more about expression and the rest. So the realism, like, okay, let's say what we are doing with hyperrealism hasn't been done, it hasn't been done before, yeah. So if you look at the Nigerian art history, you're seeing symbolism, you're seeing people trying to express themselves with more symbolic iconography, not like portraiture and the rest that we're doing now.
Sure. So you work in series where you'll have several series that contribute to a larger theme or a larger narrative, and one that I wanted to kind of dig into a little bit is your Disinformation of the Republic series, which features people with newspapers wrapped around their heads, covering their eyes. And I love that title. I think that title is fantastic. I think even before a person sees the work, they already are starting to feel certain things just from the title alone. I think that's a powerful title, especially like with all the stuff that we've been dealing with across the world in recent times. What's the origin of that series? Like, where did that idea come from?
Yeah, so I started that series in 2020, the early parts of 2020. During the COVID outbreak and all of that. And then coupled with, the riots that was happening everywhere, the Black Lives Matter and the rest. So I found out that most of the times that people are more agitated, from, false news and, and misinformation, and the way that the government is using that as a tool, and not just the government, but, any person that has influence, and have listeners, we always have a way to tailor whatever their listeners are going to, hear, to help kind of alter their own reaction, so people are not reacting based on their genuine feelings or reacting based on how they feel. Rather, they are reacting based on the information that has been poisoned. Most of the times that these medias give you poisoned angles, for you to react a certain type of way. And this is like let's say it's more like a robotic reaction, So why I created that piece, you see that most of the things I try to do with my subject is I try to cover their eyes, right? Try to cover their eyes to show that, and then you see their mouths are free, which means the ears are covered, which means whatever news that they're hearing, both from their ears and from their eyes, is going to change whatever view and whatever reaction they're going to have, including what they can say with their mouth.
Yeah, and I think it's powerful. And misinformation, disinformation across the board has become a huge problem. And I don't say that lightly, because I was thinking about that before we started talking. A lot of times it's easy to say, well, this is the worst that this or that has ever been. But really, things like, racism has always been there. It's just more, people are more aware of it, right? But I think with misinformation, I think it genuinely is worse than it's ever been, partly because information is so much easier to access. So it's so much easier to corrupt because of it, right? And I think that's definitely been the case here in the US. Has that been your experience as well in Nigeria? It's hard for me to see if the same types of problems with misinformation that we have here are also problems in other parts of the world that, so I'm curious, is that the same type of situation there?
It is exactly the same type of situation here, because I have a friend who is a journalist, so he got a print of that work. He got a print of the Disinformation of the Republic, and he said something to me. He said one thing that, drove him to getting a print of that work was because he's a journalist. He's a journalist in Germany. And he said he has a poster in their office that says journalism is telling the stories that people don't want to be told, right? And every other thing outside that is just PR. And you just find out across like what the government is doing, in the society in general, because we've had like similar issues here. So that was a moment last year that every Nigerian suffered. Like we had this NSAS movement, right? So right. A lot of Nigerians, they didn't like what it was about. It was against police brutality, and in extension, corrupt government agencies and all of that. So Nigerians came out and tried to protest, and we had a moment, a day where the government, where the military opened fire on innocent protesters and killed, quite a number of people. And that case, for example, was one of the key moments, that changed that demonstration, that changed the direction it took, because people became scared, and the government didn't take responsibility for what happened and all of that. So the disinformation and the misinformation around a situation like that is something you see across countries, across different situations around us. And you find out that there's no time when the people can really figure out what is being told to them or verify what is being told to them. I think that time is gone. That time is gone.
Do you feel that because of how difficult it is to get the honest kind of factual truth, do you feel that a heightened sense of responsibility yourself to communicate your experience through your art?
Yeah, sure. That's exactly the type of thoughts that comes to me whenever I'm trying to develop ideas.
Okay. So, you mentioned that you moved to Lagos and you're currently living there now. What is the art community like there in Lagos? Do you feel like there's a strong sense of community there?
Yes, there is. And then the idea about Lagos is a state with more than 20 million people, and this is just one state in Nigeria. And the difference with Lagos with other states is that we have a representation of all the ethnic groups in Nigeria in Lagos, right? So it's like a diversified. We have more than 280 ethnic groups in Nigeria, and imagine a state that has a representation of all that, people from that ethnic group. So Lagos has this diversity. Lagos have the diverse culture where people from different parts of Nigeria come together and form, let's say, like more a hyper cultural setting where it's just different. It's just different because you don't have one dominant tribe or something. You just, every time you think if this set of people are dominant, you're going to see some other set of people doing something, that is exclusive. Yeah. So Lagos is very diverse, and I would say the cultural setting is also very diverse, too.
Okay. So do you feel that you've had an opportunity to learn about other people's cultures in other parts of Nigeria that maybe you may not have otherwise had that?
Yeah, sure. You're meeting different people, you're meeting different people from different, parts of Nigeria in Lagos. That's the whole setup.
Very cool. How have you seen the art community specifically change in Nigeria over the years? Since you've been involved, how have you seen it evolve?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the thing is this. First of all, I would say that the art world in Nigeria, let's say the art scene in Nigeria is expanding. It's being more accommodative and is accommodative of different styles, because you see new artists who have different ideas, to portray their works. You're beginning to see new artists who are using different materials, and the art world itself here is expanding and accommodating, people with different ideas. And also the art community is also growing. So there's more awareness on art, because most of the time, and this has helped also in the appreciation of art generally. Because most of the time you have this select few of people who are gallery goers, who are museum goers, right? But now that population is increasing, because of, I would say social media, because a lot are being shared via social media. So people don't have to, have an artist friend or have an artist brother before they know about art. So you're seeing art in our own cyberspace, and you also, it gets more people interested.
Okay. Are you hopeful about the state of art in Nigeria? Do you feel that it's growing in a positive direction? And I guess, how would you like to see the art community evolve in the future?
Yeah, sure. So I'm looking at an art scene where we have more when we have like more institutions like museums, where we have
Mm.
more institutions like galleries and who are not just who are not just supporting artists, but who are more interested in supporting art, in general in the community, try to build, the whole community together. So these are like the things I'm looking to see, grow, become better in Nigeria because they are already happening and you're seeing that. So also I'm looking at a place where Nigerian artists can confidently sell their own works, here in Nigeria without, really looking for international shows, where they feel that the work will be more appreciated and that. So we're looking at where we have auction houses here who can really, sell artist work, with great value.
Do you think that interest in the arts is, I guess you as an artist, do you find that more people are interested in your work outside of Nigeria than inside of Nigeria? And is that been your experience? And is that something you're hoping to change in the future, that more people inside of Nigeria actually have an appreciation?
Exactly. So that's the idea. Every artist will pray for that, will want that, right? So, for example, on my Instagram following, Nigerians are like the third. If you go to my Instagram insights, right? So Nigeria is like the third most popular followers I have. So you have the United States, yeah. You have the UK, you have Nigeria, you have Brazil, you have India and others. So I'm looking for the time where we have more people from Nigeria follow my works on the internet and all of that.
How do you think that? I guess. How would you imagine that changes? How do you? What advice would you give to people to help make that change to where there's more awareness inside of Nigeria about the art that you're creating?
Exactly. That's where I feel the institutions, need to come
institutions,
in.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
So museums, galleries, I guess
galleries and more shows and all that.
Okay. What advice would you give to a young person in Nigeria that wants to become a professional artist? What kind of, suggestions do you have to them to get started?
Yeah. I think the thing is, you try to know the key areas, where you can, where you can really focus on in developing your skills, because most of the times you have artists who are, really talented in a specific type of art, but when they look at the larger community of art, they don't find the kind of footing or the kind of recognition for the type of art, that they can make. So what the type of advice I try to give to Nigerian artists or, younger artists are focus on your skills and find ways or find an art genre that you can really express yourself in, and then try to network among younger artists as well, because most of the times these are connections like that is what kind of catapults you. And most of the Nigerian artists or most of younger artists are just, trying to look when the gallery is going to say, hey, come on, bring this works for exhibition. Most of the time it's the connection, among your younger colleagues that can really help you, to put your works out there.
Yeah. And I mean, that network that you guys established early in your career obviously has been a huge benefit for you.
True,
so,
true.
I guess, let's talk about what you have coming up. What does 2022 look like for you? What do you have coming up?
Okay, so currently I have a show going on in Israel, and it's a show of 5 artists, hyper-realistic artists, and that is what's happening at the moment. And then for 2020, I'm also developing a body of works, that I'm planning to put in shows. So there is no concrete exhibition I can mention right here now, but some things are going to happen.
Awesome. So you think that'll be in 2022, or is it going to be further out?
Exactly, in 2022.
Okay. Anything else that you have coming up that you'd want to put on people's radar? Group shows, print releases, stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm going to have a print release, for Christmas, and it's going to happen in the first week of of Christmas, yeah, of December. So that's like the closest thing that's going to happen soon.
Okay, awesome. So like where can people follow you to keep up with that stuff?
Yeah, sure. My Instagram is Oscar Ukonu, and my website is oscarukonu.com. So most of my prints I sell them directly through my website.
Awesome. Very cool. So last question, and this is something that I like to ask everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
Oh, okay. Oh, I have a lot of them. Right? So, there's a friend of mine who's also an artist. He's a ballpoint artist. His works are something that you can like, and his name is Patrick Onyekwere. So it's someone you can look at. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. Well, Oscar, thank you so much for doing the show, man. It's been really good talking to you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Faye. Thank you for having me.
So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Oscar. It was interesting to hear him talk about the recognition that he had that if he was going to get to the level of rendering ability that he really wanted to get to, that he'd have to start treating his pen like a pen and not continuing to try to use it like he would a pencil. Turning to cross-hatching, hatching, and scribbling, which were all ink techniques that he'd picked up from architecture school. It's interesting that the same attention to detail that made him good at architecture also made him great at rendering highly detailed portraits like he does today. But then when it came down to the tools that he ultimately uses for his art, he actually prefers the less technically precise, but more fluid option of the ballpoint pen as a way of, embracing that inevitable mistake and really kind of leaning into the journey of it all, So I thought that was interesting that his skills from architecture carry over, but the tool he has intentionally moved away from a tool that you normally use with architecture. It was also interesting to hear about his hopes to, gain more institutional support for the arts within Nigeria. How right now he has more followers and supporters outside of his home country than within, which, I guess in a lot of ways helps to better spread his message even further. He's trying to portray the African experience, so communicating to people outside of Africa, I guess, helps further that even more in a way, right? But even so, you can understand him having that desire to have his own country appreciate his art as much or even more than other countries do. And, as he suggested, that kind of social acceptance almost requires institutions like museums and larger galleries to really embrace the artists and the arts that are in their own backyards, telling the stories of their people in a very real and authentic way. It seems to be going in a positive direction, though. I mean, the community seems to be there. They just need to get the institutions on board. So let's hope that continues to grow and build into what he ultimately wants it to be. So thanks again to Oscar for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. And just a reminder, one big way you could help out if you're really enjoying the show would be to check out the show's Patreon. You can find all the details on patreon.com/artaffairs. And as always, you can contact me through my website at artaffairs.podcast.com or on Instagram at artaffairs.podcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other.